Okay, YouTube, so here's part 2 of the rear end build of this Jeep, which is a Ford 8.8. As you can see, it's pretty much built up. That kit from Iron Rock, right there, is about $200. It's all welded on, painted, and everything. And brakes, the whole 9 yards. I know I said in the part 1 I was going to do steel braided brake lines, but frankly this was, I believe, $16, and I kind of want to just get this on the road, and I can't exactly find really short brake lines. And down the road I probably will change it, but for right now that'll just work. I had to change the slide pin bolts on this side because they were locked up. The rotors are rusty, but it doesn't look like it's rusty to where they're falling apart. So a few applications and they'll be back to normal looking rotors. The pads are actually still really good, so just gonna reuse them for the time being. Yep, same thing on this side. Pads really good. Slide pin bolts and this line still good, so reusing it. There are no parking shoes at all, and I believe what I said in the last video is I'm not hooking up the parking brake right away because I have to figure out a way to modify the cable for this style to the Cherokee cable. So until I get the cable set out, I won't replace the shoes because they're completely gone when I took them off. They're nothing but just shells. The brake material just fell off when I pulled the rotor off. Stamped cover. I was going to go with some hard metal or aluminum cover, but for right now this will work because for the most part the Jeep will be just a daily driver / weekend warrior when I have the Ranger in the garage, putting a V8 in that. So for like stage 1, everything on this Jeep is pretty much fixed lift for just basically daily driver. So this kit was welded on with a stick welder instead of a MIG welder, and from what my friend said, who's more of a welder than I am, stick welding is a lot stronger and it's a harder weld than a MIG welder. So welded the axle tubes here and tried to weld the some of the cross member to the actual housing, but the gap's too big to really make a good weld. But from what he said is, if you wanted to weld right to this, you don't need to heat it up with stick welding because it's already a hotter type weld than MIG weld. Could be true, could be false, I don't know. I'm not the person who knows everything here, just saying what I think. So this kit, like I said, is about $200, and it comes with everything you need, even instructions, really good instructions for putting this kit on. And what they give you is measurements from the plate where the whole bracket and everything for the brakes bolt on. Measure from here to here, basically where to put the leaf spring pad at, and then they also measure from here to the center of the bolt hole for the shock mount. Now, you got to remember this on the Cherokee. Shock mount goes behind the axle on the driver's side, and the passenger side's on the front of the axle because of where they're at on the Jeep under there. So you got to remember that. But the measurement from the pad to basically there is the same on both sides, and I'll show you the instructions right here. Basically, they go through and say this is what you have in your kit and what rear end you're looking for when you go to the junkyard. The best use is what they say is 95 to 01 Explorer, Ford Explorer with disc brakes. The older Ford Explorer, the first generation, the 91 to 94, have drums. They will work, but you don't have discs, you have drums. Disc brake is very sought after. Like mine, it's got a limited slip, like they state. There's most of them have limited slips, and either variation from 355s to 410s. I got 355s in that rear end, or not 355s, 373s is what I have in that rear end. And I thought that's what the Jeep had, but it actually has 355, so I'm changing the front axle too, but that's in another video. So basically, first things first, they want you to use a degree finder, which is this right here, to see if the axle tubes are bent on your junkyard axle, and this, I believe, is called a dial indicator, to see if there's any real play in it. But frankly, most rear ends from the junkyard are not going to be bent unless it's in a wrecked vehicle. And most junkyard rear ends are 8.8s. I've rarely hear or read that they go out very often. Most of the time they go out because of low fluid. But most of the time you'd probably be fine just looking at the rear end and see how much rust is on it and basically where the leaks are at. If it's got a pretty substantial leak, you might want to stay away from it. If it's got so-so leak like mine had on the one side for the axle seal, it was dirty but not dripping wet, well then you're pretty much good to go. Now here's the point where you need to set the pinion angle. Now I believe it says it's factory set at 10 degrees, which I did on that. Now the way I did that is I used 3 jack stands, and again you have to use one of these angle finders. If you see it moving at the top there, it's magnetic, goes on anywhere you want to go. So basically you need that, and that's basically what I did right there on 3 jack stands. Found the angle of the pinion first by putting it right on the pinion yoke right down there because it's magnetic. Set that up, and then use this again and set that right on that when the pinion was at 10 degrees there. Set this right on there. Measured it out from the flange that they tell you, right there, and basically make sure this is at 0 with the pinion still at 10 degrees. So this should be at 0, pinion should be at 10 degrees, and you basically weld it together. And this is very helpful. Measurements that they give you along with this, you should be fine. They say tack it on and then place it up in the Jeep first to basically make sure everything's good, but I didn't do that because I didn't feel like driving 10 miles one way to make sure it fit and then driving 10 miles another way back to have it completely welded. So if I bolt it in and it doesn't line up, well then I'm fucked. But that's pretty much it with the instructions. They give you good instructions with this kit. So it's about $200 and they give you everything you need to do it with. And my only complaint is about the kit is that this was a little wider than I thought it would be, to where I actually had to cut one side of it down and move it a little bit, like one way or another, I don't remember which way, to actually fit on the axle, because it was pretty close to this leaf spring perch. It might have been this side or the other side, I don't remember, but it was pretty damn close to the leaf spring perch to where I had to cut it down so the U-bolt will pass through. I did make sure the U-bolt passed through, so it's good to just make sure that U-bolt passed through. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward kit and the instructions are pretty damn good. Now it's just to bolt it up on those leaf springs that has an add leaf in it, and hopefully I didn't screw myself. So let me bolt that up, and you'll probably see if I screwed myself or not in a moment. So there's the axle bolted in, and I kind of did screw myself because, yeah, it bolted in and I'm gonna have it in the center pin of each leaf spring, and that wasn't the issue. And I checked my measurements from this flange plate to there, They're both the same on each side, but when you look in here, the pinion angle's good, but the pinion's too close to the exhaust. And when you get down in there, when you get down in here and look at it closer, there's the transfer case, there's the trans tunnel, or drive shaft tunnel, whatever you want to call it, and this is about the middle of the trans tunnel, just eyeballing it. You look down, hey, the mounting's over here, not over here. And you look there, and everything like that, as I'm crowded in here, that's pretty damn close to hitting that, if it articulated. So roughly measuring in the trans tunnel to where it pinion lines up, the pinion, the whole axle, has to go that way about an inch. But it's like I measured between leaf springs and the mounting bracket to see if I'm off a little bit, but the thing is, these leaf springs you can move kind of this way. You can twist them back and forth and move them back and forth a bit, so it doesn't really help me there. But the problem is, if you move it an inch that to the driver's side, that bolt for the caliper is damn close to leaf springs. So I'm kind of stuck here on what to really do, whether to leave it and chop the exhaust off or move the exhaust or something. But then the drive shaft will probably hit this. So I kind of did screw myself without test fitting this. So the measurements they pretty much gave me are right on the axle. But the problem is, like I said, the pinion is not lined up in the trans tunnel. So I screwed myself, and now I don't want to do anything with the rear end, and I'm just going to move on to the front end. So you'll see that much later of me redoing that. I'm just going to go ahead and rip out the front axle, do the motor work, and videotape that all, and then once everything's done up front and everything else is done, I'll go back to the rear end. So that's where I'm at with it right now. So pretty much screwed myself, and I should have test fitted it, but was too lazy to drive back and then manhandle it in there and try and test fit it, and then drive back over to my friend's house and have it welded completely. I think I'm going to buy a welder, a MIG welder, and just redo the perches. So there it is. So that's pretty much part 2 of the rear end on hold. Going to front end and motor now. So that's going to be next. So stay tuned for that. This sucks.